They popped champagne in my living room at 10:03 a.m. Not his, not hers, mine, my son, the same boy I once sold my wedding ring to put through law school, raised my crystal flute like a trophy. His wife twirled in my kitchen, filming a new home tour while stepping over the box I'd labeled Mom's Sweaters just hours before. "To our forever," she beamed, the same phrase I engraved inside their wedding bands. I stood in the hallway, half in shadow, sipping from the chipped mug they'd missed in the cabinet. The tea shook in my hands, not from rage, but from the hum of a vibration in my coat pocket. Wells Fargo, $1.2 million wire confirmed, 180, mainstay, ACQ, complete. The same building they called the Golden Ticket, the one he begged me to co-sign for just 3 weeks ago. My signature on their deed may have faded, but the one on their undoing? Fresh, legal, irrevocable. They didn't know my name was still on this house. They didn't know I'd just bought the building they staked their future on. And as she hung my curtains in their new color scheme, I whispered to no one in particular, "Read the fine print, baby." They say every mother makes sacrifices, but I didn't sacrifice. I offered, not out of guilt, out of love. I bought that house when I was 27, 2 bedrooms, a cracked sidewalk that always caught your toe if you weren't careful. The furnace coughed in winter like an old smoker, but it was ours, just me and my boy. His father was gone before we picked out nursery curtains, so I worked nights at the hospital, doubles, holidays. I missed every birthday between ages 8 and 13, but I never missed rent. I sold my wedding ring the day he got accepted to law school, and I didn't cry about it until he walked that graduation stage. When he became a lawyer, I thought we'd made it. Not he, we. The plan was simple. I'd retire, move into the guest room, help with their daughter, maybe plant tomatoes again. I even added my name to the deed. Not for power, just protection, just so I could still belong somewhere. At first it felt like home, but the warmth wore off quick. Rachel, his wife, started calling me Roomy, with that southern drawl that sounds sweet but slices deep. She rearranged my closet, put my tea mugs on the highest shelf. One morning, I went to pack lunch for my granddaughter. She loves peanut butter, with the crusts cut off, just like her dad used to, and Rachel had already sent her off with a protein shake. "She's not a kid anymore," she said with a laugh. That's when I noticed the shift. A phone call he took outside. A folder he shoved into a drawer when I walked in. He started finishing his sentences with, "Don't worry about it, Mom." But I did worry. I noticed everything, especially the way he looked almost relieved when I mentioned maybe visiting my sister for a few days. I didn't know it yet, but they weren't just ready for me to leave. They were planning it. It happened on a Wednesday. No fight, no yelling, just breakfast. Rachel set down 2 plates, one for herself, one for Jake. I waited, assuming mine was still in the microwave. It wasn't. She looked up with that tight, practiced smile. "Oh, I didn't realize you were home. Thought you were visiting your sister this week." I wasn't. Jake didn't even look up, just kept scrolling through his phone like I wasn't sitting 3 feet away. That night, I heard them whispering again. I pressed my ear to the door. "She's not leaving," Rachel muttered. "She said she changed her mind." "She will," he said. "Just give it a few more days." The next morning, a note waited on the fridge, crooked, curling at the edges. "Let's talk later, about finding you a place that's better for your needs. Jake." I stared at that handwriting, the same slanted J's I once taped to the fridge when he got his first spelling bee certificate. Now it was being used to write me out of the only place I'd ever felt safe. That afternoon, he sat me down with store-brand coffee, cheap, bitter, impersonal, and gave me the speech. The house felt tight. They needed room to grow. This was for my comfort. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just nodded. Then I packed 3 boxes, 1 suitcase. The rest, they could keep it. Even the ceramic turtle my granddaughter made me in preschool, I thought she might hand it to me. Instead, she stayed upstairs. Quiet. No goodbye. The silence in that hallway was louder than any slammed door. I stepped outside, suitcase in one hand, keys in the other, then turned back, just once, hoping for a face in the window. There wasn't one. And that's when I remembered the lockbox, buried under winter coats in my storage unit, sealed with tape I hadn't touched in years. If they were rewriting the rules, maybe I needed to revisit the ones we started with. I didn't know it yet, but inside that box was something they'd overlooked. A signature they never questioned, a clause they never read, and a right they never should have left behind. I hadn't opened that lockbox in over a decade. The tape peeled like old skin. Inside, beneath old pay stubs and faded crayon drawings labeled "To Mom," was a worn manila folder, edges softened by time, not use. I pulled it out gently, like lifting a memory I wasn't sure I had the heart to face. Inside, the original deed, still signed, still notarized, still bearing my name, not as co-signer, but as co-owner. I stopped breathing for a second. My name was right there in ink, sitting beside his, mine steady and slanted, his proud and looping like the 3rd grade spelling test I once taped to our fridge, both signatures, still legally binding. Buried deeper in the folder was an envelope from a real estate attorney I'd nearly forgotten. Inside, a clause, highlighted in faded yellow, right of first refusal, primary holder reserves purchase priority in the event of equity transfer or mortgage default. I blinked, reading it twice. They hadn't just left my name on the deed. They'd left me with the first right to buy back the house. And from the loan application I'd glimpsed on Jake's desk weeks ago, I already knew they were trying to refinance, probably using the house to leverage his big new investment property downtown. Now I understood the urgency. They weren't just trying to get rid of me. They were trying to erase proof of who helped build their foundation, proof of a signature they never expected to matter. And then, tucked behind the final document, just a scrap of yellow paper, nearly see-through from time, I found it. My handwriting, a post-it note, taped there years ago during escrow. This is for both of us. Love, Mom. My throat tightened. I'd forgotten I even wrote it. All those years, I thought my sacrifices had disappeared into air. And here they were, ink on paper, sitting in a box no one ever thought I'd open. I didn't feel powerful. I didn't feel vengeful. I felt calm. The kind of calm that comes before a storm, knows exactly where it's going to land. I closed the folder slowly. They thought I'd left with nothing but 3 boxes and a suitcase, but they forgot the most dangerous kind of silence, the kind that remembers. I didn't tell anyone what I found, not my sister, not my old co-workers at the hospital, not even my best friend Helen, who'd probably have shouted the whole thing across Sunday bingo. Instead, I drove to the one person who'd know exactly what to do with a dusty clause in a 15-year-old deed. Tom Whitaker, small-town attorney, still used a flip phone, still signed his emails with "Warmly, Tom," but the man had a memory like a steel trap. He looked at the paperwork, squinted, then grinned. "Well, well," he said, "looks like they forgot Mom's still holding the bullet." It turns out the clause was even stronger than I thought. Not only did I have legal co-ownership, I also held the right to block any sale, mortgage, or equity transfer unless I signed off. And guess what Jake and Rachel were trying to do? Take out a second mortgage, using my house as collateral to fund a commercial property downtown, a shiny new building they called their future. Tom leaned back and steepled his fingers. You could fight this, he said. File an injunction. Go to court. Take the house. I shook my head. No, I said. I want them to think they've won. So instead, we filed quiet paperwork. I reconfirmed my ownership with the county, locked in the first refusal clause, froze any title activity until further review. Then I waited. And while I waited, I watched. Jake and Rachel started posting photos of the building under construction. Breaking ground, they called it. I zoomed in on the background, our living room furniture still visible in their stories. They hosted wine nights, dinner parties, real estate mixers. They thought I was gone. They thought the house was theirs. And they thought the building was their next big thing. But here's the thing about foundations. If the ground underneath you isn't solid, it doesn't matter how tall you build. They were building on me, my signature, my sacrifice, my silence. And while they poured concrete, I was preparing the paperwork to buy out the very building they were staking everything on, through a shell company, quiet, clean, no red flags, no name they'd recognize. The money, I had it. A combination of savings, hospital pension, and an old CD I never touched because I was saving it for something important. Turns out this was important enough. And as the notary stamped the final acquisition form, I didn't feel angry. I felt ready. 3 weeks after the final paperwork was signed, the phone calls started. First, a voicemail from some bank associate I didn't know. Hi, this is Jill from Premier Equity Solutions, just calling about the title verification delay for the Anderson building. If you could give us a call back. I didn't. Next came the emails, then silence, then another email, this one urgent, CC'd to multiple parties. It wasn't addressed to me, of course, but my name was on the attached deed. Turns out their loan application had hit a snag. The title wasn't clean because part of it still belonged to someone they'd pushed out with cheap coffee and colder goodbyes. They tried to correct the record, claimed I'd forfeited my rights, tried to schedule a hearing, but by then, it was too late. The documents were sealed, verified, and the purchase of the new building, quietly executed through my shell company 2 days prior. I didn't gloat. I didn't even answer the phone. Let the system deliver the news. A week later, I walked into the shareholder meeting of a real estate development firm. It was held in a sleek glass conference room downtown, leather chairs, pastries none of us touched. My son sat at the end of the table, pale, eyes darting. Rachel clutched her tablet like a life raft. They were about to present the revised budget to the board until someone whispered into Jake's ear and pointed toward me. His neck stiffened, and then, for the first time in over 2 months, our eyes met. He looked at me like I was a ghost. I didn't wave. I didn't smile. I just opened the file in front of me, signed with the same name that used to be on his field trip permission slips. Co-owner, majority interest holder, legal authority. The room fell silent. He tried to speak. Mom, wait, what is this? I closed the folder. This, I said calmly, is me showing up. And I walked out. I didn't need to stay. I wasn't there for applause or for vengeance. I just needed him to see it, to understand that when you erase someone's place at your table, sometimes they buy the whole building. Jake showed up at my door 2 days later. No warning, no apology, just that same knock I used to wait for when he forgot his house key after school. But this time, he wasn't holding a backpack. He was holding a folder and his pride. "Mom, can we talk?" he asked, eyes darting past me like he expected someone else to answer. We sat at my kitchen table, same spot I used to place his spelling words, his peanut butter sandwiches, his college acceptance letter. He didn't touch the coffee I poured. He just opened the folder. "I messed up," he said. "Rachel pushed hard. I thought you didn't want to be part of our future." I didn't respond. I didn't know the clause was still active. I didn't know you had that kind of control. That kind of control, like I was some corporate shark instead of the woman who once took night shifts to buy him soccer cleats. "I'm not asking for the building back," he continued. "Just cut and give me time. Let me fix this." I looked at him, really looked. This wasn't a son asking for forgiveness. This was a man asking for leverage. I slid a single document across the table, my terms. He skimmed them. His lips tightened. "You want the house." "I want what's mine," I said softly, "and I want it without your name on it." He blinked. "You're serious?" I nodded. "If not, the board will be notified you've been operating under false equity assumptions, and your investors will want answers." He stared at me. "How could you do this to me?" I picked up my mug. "You taught me how." I didn't feel proud. I didn't walk away from that kitchen table feeling victorious or powerful or even whole. I just felt quiet. Not the kind of quiet that waits for revenge. The kind that comes after you've said everything worth saying, without ever raising your voice. I sat by the window that night, same spot where I used to watch him ride his bike up the driveway, helmet too big for his head. Now, he drove past in a luxury car I'd never been in, and I didn't wave. People think strength looks like steel, but sometimes it looks like letting go, without bitterness. Sometimes it sounds like silence, and feels like not chasing after someone who never turned around. I didn't want revenge. I wanted respect. And now I finally have both. But what surprised me most wasn't how it all ended. It was how one person still made it all feel worth staying soft for. She came by last weekend, knocked on the door with a crayon drawing in hand. "Grandma," she said, "can you come to my recital?" I didn't hesitate. He called last night. The number flashed on my phone like it still had the right to interrupt my quiet. There was no apology in his voice, just hesitation, just weariness. "Mom," he said, "I know things are broken. I know you probably hate me." Silence. Then, "Do you still love me?" I didn't answer, not because I didn't know, but because some questions don't deserve answers, not until the person asking them is ready to hear the truth, not just the version that makes them feel better. So I let the silence speak for me, hung up, no anger, no ache, and I sat back in the same chair I used to rock him to sleep in. Funny how time loops back on itself. They say blood makes you related, but trust is what makes you family. And this house, it may have started with love, but now it's built on something even stronger, memory, boundary, and the courage to choose peace over permission.